Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 242, Qiang Tribe. The 5th month was the height of summer, and it was so scorching hot that the advisors could not stand the heat. All of them hid under the pavilion in the center of the pond, sipping their tea, smoking their pipes, and fanning themselves vigorously with their folding fans. After drinking his fill of cool tea, Yu Xiaozhe was now feeling rather uncomfortable. Just as he was thinking of making his way over to the latrine, he saw Fei Sheng leading Harigo over to the courtyard. Second master is going to cross the border within these 2 days. Yu Xiaozhe wiped the sweat from his neck with his handkerchief. Is Harigo tagging along, too? He's a scorpion. To keep himself in good health, Kongling did not consume cold food. Instead, he sat by the cascading water to cool off in the shade. He can negotiate with the Qiang tribe. This was at the prefectural lord's behest, so Yu Xiaozhe could not refute. He nodded and sat next to Yao Wenyu. I heard that the Qiang tribe people are all strong and sturdy, and they ride horses that are big and tall, unlike the other tribes in the desert. Gao Zhongxiang had never seen the Qiang tribe before either. He stayed his brush, and as he dipped it in ink, he turned his head and waited with Yu Xiaozhe for Yao Wenyu's answer. Yao Wenyu closed the book on his lap. The Qiang tribe is a large tribe in the southwest of the desert. Before Amuir rose to power, the strongest tribe in the desert was the Hanshi tribe, followed by the Qiang tribe. The Qiang tribe used to be stationed in the east of Suotian Pass. They have their own horses, so they don't use the ponies from the Guma tribe. The horses of the Qiang tribe are also called the bear horses. They are even bigger than the war steeds from Libya. Gao Zhongxiang initially thought that what Yu Xiaozhe said before was just mere rumors. He never expected it to be true. He was alarmed upon hearing it, and he said, I heard rumors of the Qiang tribe while I was in Imperial College. Back then, the Feng clan was the one guarding over Suotian Pass. Silver Spear of the Snowy Pass, Feng Yishan. General Feng was the one who fought the Qiang tribe back to the east. The 4 generals of Yanji were renowned: Silver Spear of Snowy Pass, Feng Yishan, Iron Wings of Hanjian, Xiao Fangxiu, Thunderbolt of Kangjun, Qi Xiu, and Flying Frost of Bianjun, Lu Pinjian. They were all men the lads of Great Zhou spoke about the most in their early years. Feng Yishan, like Xiao Fangxiu, came from a humble background. When he was 14 years old, he pointed to the continuous range of snowy peaks of Suotian Pass and made a vow to become Great Zhou's impregnable bastion of iron. At 40 years of age, he buried his youngest, last remaining son under the snowy peaks. Eventually, he met his end in battle, leaving only his thumb ring carved out of bone to his adopted son, Zoqian Kaiu. Yuan Zhou is indeed widely read and knowledgeable. To think you even know about the Qiang tribe. In fact, Qidong's earliest battle steeds were bred with the bear horses. Kongling said. When the king of wolves, Xiao Fangxiu, was a junior soldier at Loxia Pass, all the horses from Loxia Pass were transferred from Qidong, and they were also of this breed of horse. Whoa, Yu Xiaozhe exclaimed. That fierce, huh? When Amuir unified the 4 tribes of Hanshi, Guma, Liaoying, and Qingshu, he had the thought of making the Qiang tribe pledge allegiance to him. Feeling cold, Kongling got up to return to the table. They fought, and Amuir ended up with nothing to show for it. This time, the interest of the remaining 3 men was piqued, and they sat around Kongling. Gao Zhongxiang said, that was the 4 tribes' elites that would even put the Libya armored cavalry at a disadvantage. These were different places. The Qiang tribe was still roaming near Suotian Pass at that time. They occupied the higher grounds, and it proved to be tedious for the Hanshi tribe to storm and assault them. Charge before the Qiang tribe, and they would take a beating. Kongling laughed and enacted it out vividly. There were always the Qiang appearing and disappearing among the endlessly meandering snowy peaks. Wielding scimitars in hand and sporting leather armors on their arms, they launched an attack from top to bottom and gave the Han-Shi tribe a kick in the chest. The Han-Shi tribe then tumbled down to the ground and passed out. Yu Xiaozhe promptly yelled, "Oh, dear me! How terrible!" Yao Wenyu almost choked and spat out the tea he had not swallowed. Covering his nose and mouth with the handkerchief in his palm, he coughed a few times before regaining his composure. Kong Ling said with a smile, "Indeed. They fought until Amuir was at the end of his rope and had no choice but to transfer the Qingsha tribe near the Bianjun commandery." Wiping himself, Yao Wenyu said, "The Qiang tribe has its hero, too. When General Feng was still alive, the man who faced up against him in battle was called Su Bishao. He was the hero of the Qiang tribe." Gao Zhongxiang moved forward. "This Su. I know of him. Yuan Zhou, I don't know if you still remember, but when I just stepped into the capital, it was the legend of General Feng that I never got tired of listening to in the tea house near the Imperial Academy. He and this Su Bishao were just like the King of Wolf and Amuir." "He was a hero," Kong Ling said. "If not for Amuir, the Han-Shi tribe's current standing would have been occupied by the Qiang tribe, led by Su Bishao. He was both Feng Yishan's foe and friend. There was this one tale from the tea houses in Deng province. I don't know if it's fabricated, but it is said that when Feng Yishan shot through the Hongying banner that symbolized the dignity of Bianxia, Su Bishao applauded in response. Both men looked at each other across thousands upon thousands of soldiers and horses and roared with laughter. From then on, they would always mutually send their regards to each other before a battle." Gao Zhongxiang gripped his brush between his fingers and struck a pose to imitate that storyteller. General Feng, sans his armor, stood amidst the snow with his hands at his back and his white robe flapping in the wind, cutting the very picture of a poised, suave man. Su Bishao, cloaked with a fur hide, cupped his fists at the general across the curtain of snow and, in a loud, clear voice, said, "Are the grain wagons for the armored cavalry ready?" Gao Zhongxiang paused in mid-pose. Before he could close his agape mouth, he saw Kong Ling and the others all stand up to bow in unison to Shen Zequan behind him. "They are ready," Kong Ling said. "Fei Sheng has already checked them this morning. Qiao Tianya will send them out of the city later." Shen Zequan tapped the back of Gao Zhongxiang's shoulder with his folding fan and said, "I am Su Bishao, valiant tiger of the Qiang tribe. I've brought along kumis from my hometown. The wine is delicious, and I wish to wait for the general to finish it before we fight." Gao Zhongxiang put down his brush in a fluster and turned around to bow to the prefectural lord. "No need to be nervous," Shen Zequan said. "As they say, of dreams the lads of Great Zhou bear of the snowy pass, who knows not of the Suotian spear." Shifu used to love to listen to this tale, too. Haragu stood at the entrance of the pavilion and said, "Su Bishao, the valiant tiger of the Qiang tribe. I know of him, too." Fascinated with the story, Yu Xiaozhe probed, "What happened to both of them after?" Kong Ling did not answer. Haragu picked up a fruit on the table and took a bite before saying, "Su Bishao killed Feng Yishan's youngest son, and he also killed Feng Yishan. He was then driven out of Suotian Pass by Amuir and spent some time in Gedal before retreating behind the Qingsha tribe. This man was a strange one." Haragu remembered Su Bishao, the legendary valiant tiger and hero. He abandoned himself to pleasure and merrymaking in Gedal. Every time he was drunk, he always wanted to pound on the drum and dance in honor of the dead. This tall, strapping man had white in his hair. He was not old, and yet he looked as though he had already died. "I had a friend. Su Bishao drank his wine under the firelight. He drank my kumis, and killed my sons. I took my revenge on him, and he left me. He turned the wine sachet upside down empty. We are the brave eagles on both sides of the snowy peaks. If we have to die, it has to be at each other's hands. A pity he died." Haragu finished his fruit. He caught a cold in Gedal and was too ill even to get up. The Han-Shi tribe surrounded him. He finished all the kumis in the tent by himself. Eventually, he took his scimitar with him and died in the battle on the Gobi Desert. Gegenhazi of the Hulu tribe cut off his head and offered it up to Amu'er. Uzioze uttered an "oh" and said no more. The crowd in the pavilion at the heart of the pond all fell silent. Using Suhbishao's head, Gegenhazi helped turn the Hulu tribe into a friend of Amu'er. At the same time, he also became Hassan's friend. Several years later, the hooves of Xiao Fangxiu's horse stomped on Gegenhazi's neck, breaking it. And several more years later, Kong Ling did not voice it out. With Harigu going to the Bianjun commandery, does your lordship still want Huo Lingyun to tag along? Yao Wenyu skipped over the topic and asked. Huo Lingyun is not going to the Bianjun commandery. Shenzequan turned his head to look out of the cascading water, where Huo Lingyun stood with his back straightened. He continued, his firearms are heading north. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The next day, Xiao Qiye led the armored cavalry across the border. Shenzequan stood on the bridle path before the city gate and watched the yellow sand roll in. Meng circled down and called out twice above Shenzequan's head, it then soared once more and charged southward. Hearing the thunderous sound of the Libai armored cavalry, Fei Sheng stepped forward and moved to block out the sand for Shenzequan. Shenzequan held up his folding fan a little and stopped Fei Sheng from standing before him. Lang Tao Shuejian, in its heavy armor, snorted hot puffs of air and drove straight over from the other end of the bridle path where it was leading the armored cavalry. A smile gradually spread on Shenzequan's face, and he raised his right arm as Xiao Qiye drew closer. His wide sleeves slid down to reveal the arm guard within. With eyes in front and without reining in his horse, Xiao Qiye lowered an arm as he passed by Shenzequan. A loud, clear thud rang out as both arm guards bumped together and scraped past in just a blink of an eye. The wind fanned up Shenzequan's sleeves and robe. He said, to a resounding victory. Xiao Qiye laughed as he continued to spur his horse on towards the blazing sun. In a loud voice, he responded, a resounding victory. Waves of heat swept across while the wind-blown sand pounced over the path. Both men brushed past each other, neither looking back. End chapter. Note, Qiang is a tribe that takes the bear as its animal totem. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 243, Strive. Since the Bianjun commandery was facing the desert, it was subjected to encroachment by the windstorm. One would rarely see the blue dome of heaven standing atop the city walls. The dwellings in the territory were all low, and all that could be seen if one were to look into the distance at the open ground was a vast expanse of earthy yellow. Greenery along the way was few and far between, and only a few crooked, sickly trees could be seen after a few li on top of a horse. Wild grass and weeds spread unevenly among the Gobi Desert, much like an old master over the age of 50 about to go bald. Xiao Qiye's helmet was covered in a layer of dust. He took off his helmet and with his back to the setting sun, looked ahead at the Bianjun commandery city walls drifting among the waves of sand. This place really is poor. Harigo leaped off his horse, and the accessories around his neck clanked. He unscrewed his water canteen and tilted his head back to pour water over his face. With eyes closed, he said, the scorpions won't come here at all. The Bianjun commandery had no fields, and the lands underfoot were too barren and infertile. They were already exposing signs of cracking apart under the scorching hot 6th month. Xiao Qiye shifted his military boot away and watched the insect crawling between the crevices in the loess. The grasslands east of Suotian Pass that Amu'er went to great effort to obtain were hit by an onslaught of yellow sands and subsequently turned into a wasteland during the first year of the Xiand era. Consequently, the Qingsha tribe abandoned it and retreated back to the eastern side of the Bianjun commandery. Harigu brushed back his wet hair. His lordship wants me to discuss with the Qiang tribe but doesn't give me something to bait him with. This business requires brains. And of that, I have none. Harago was not being honest. He knew how he should negotiate, just like how he negotiated with Yan Hiru. This black scorpion knew the rules. Shenzequan did not give him a definite leverage, which implied that no matter how good a deal he managed to negotiate, Shenzequan had the final say over his rewards. However, Harago wanted to glean an opportunity to bargain from Xiao Qiye. Xiao Qiye did not look at Harago as he answered, "You better have one." Harago rubbed the back of his neck, looking a little embarrassed. The water he poured over himself soon vanished. His skin, that lay exposed under the sweltering heat, was a shade of bronze. Harago sealed back the water canteen and redoubled his effort. "I'll give the Qiang tribe food to tide over the winter. With ample food, they'd be able to remain in their territory. If that's all you can do." Xiao Qiye's eyes followed the movements of the shadows and settled upon the city gate of the Bianjun Commandery, "then anyone can negotiate this deal." Having hit a brick wall continuously, Harago rubbed his congested nose and said, "All right then. I'll give them new options." The gate of the Bianjun Commandery was in the midst of opening. Qizuyan stood before the hoisted gate with her arms folded and her blade hanging on her waist. She had gone on a night expedition last night to conduct reconnaissance, and she had only just returned at the end of the day today. She looked fatigued, having slept for only 4 hours, and she did not seem that happy to see Xiao Qiye. "Yo," Qizuyan said. "You're here." Xiao Qiye tossed his authority token to Qizuyan, who caught it and offhandedly handed it over to Qi Wei without even looking at it. Then she turned around and led Xiao Qiye into the city. "When I arrived here in the 4th year of the Xian era, Lu Guangbei said he wanted to plant trees." Xiao Qiye's heavy armor was scalding hot under the last rays of the setting sun. "So why is the Bianjun Commandery still so barren?" That was wishful thinking on his part. Qizuyan's neck was sore from her lack of sleep, so she exercised her head a little. Watching the lanterns on the streets gradually lighting up, she said, "The sandstorm was strong during the 6th year of the Xian era. He saved up some money to buy a batch of seedlings from He province and planted them at the border while it was still spring. But they barely made it to the end of the month before the cavalry trampled all over them." Was Hassan the one stationed in the Qingsha tribe at that time? Xiao Qiye mounted the steps and placed his helmet to the side. He then sat with Qizuyan and watched the armored cavalry enter the city. It was. Qizuyan did not sit. She instead leaned against the door with her chin dipped in the evening glow. "The letter you had Zhao Hui deliver has long arrived. There will be a tough battle to fight in the 6th month, but only on the premise that Hassan will really turn around and head south to attack Duan province. If he doesn't come, the Shatter camp will have to bear the consequences of your deployment of troops this time. Amuir has united with the Hulu tribe and is still persuading the Qiang tribe to pledge allegiance to him. Meanwhile, Hassan has not much food left," Xiao Qiye said. "He has to go to Duan province to obtain provisions." "You brought along a scorpion," Qizuyan said. "What is Shenzequan planning to do? When Hassan attacks Duan province, his reinforcements have to stop at Gidal on the opposite bank of the Hashi River. Only the Qiang tribe can intercept me in the southeast." Xiao Qiye stretched out his legs. "Lanzhou wants to negotiate with the Qiang tribe. Then he has to present them with enough sincerity." Qizuyan stood up straight and raised an arm to point at the snowy peaks far away in the south. "The bears have owned pastures in the south. Shenzequan's granaries can't fill their stomachs. They're greedy in ways you can't even imagine." Qizuyan, no, starting with Qi Xiu, Qidong had attempted to negotiate with the Qiang tribe in the hope that they would defect to Great Zhou like the Huiyan tribe in the north, but it proved to be too difficult. The Qiang tribe was a strong tribe. They were completely different from the Huiyan tribe with nothing to their name. They believed that their scimitars and bear horses could grab them even better lands, and for that reason, they never cared about Amuir. "Lanzhou is willing to cede the Hanshi tribe's territory to them," Xiao Qiye said. "They have been roaming all over after leaving Suotian Pass. This is what they want the most. Qiang squatted down and said to Xiao Qi, yeah, right, you guys are really too clever. The Qiang tribe does indeed want territory, but are you the great ruler of the desert? The tricks Shenzhequan used on the people of Great Zhou in Zongbo are useless here. The bears don't munch on the pies in the sky. Empty promises won't work on them. I have dealt with them before. They are far more cunning than the Hanshi tribe. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Li Xiong was catching lizards beneath the eaves. He kneeled on the polished wooden planks, carrying a lizard by its tail as he said to Ding Tao, grill it. It's tasty. Ding Tao was sitting cross-legged with a brush in hand, writing and drawing. When he caught some time to take a breather, he cast a glance at the lizard and said in disdain, "Eeow." Li Xiong lightly swung the lizard around. This is a snake of Geedle. Ding Tao had not heard Li Xiong bring up Geedle and Lei Jingjin in a long time. He set his notebook aside and looked at the lizard. Doesn't this look just like the lizards of Tse province? Li Xiong sniffed the air, then answered. It's not the same. This one has a smell, the smell of the desert, of yellow sand. It even went as far as fleeing from Geedle. Ding Tao held his chin in a pensive pose. Life in Geedle must have been tough. Staying here is still the most comfortable. Li Xiong answered, no, it likes to stay. Fei Shen yelled for Ding Tao from where he stood at the other end. Ding Tao scrambled to his feet in one move and ran over without waiting for Li Xiong to finish his sentence. The sweets that he had bundled in his lap fell all over the ground. In the same old place. Looking at Ding Tao, Li Xiong reached out to pick up all the sweets and stuff them all into his mouth in one go, his words muffled as he said, I like staying in the same old place, too. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. The current chieftain of the Qiang tribe was someone called Dalantai. He was not a relative of Suhbishao but his bodyguard was. After Suhbishao died in battle in Geedle, Dalantai fled to the area behind the Qingsha tribe with the remainder of the Qiang tribe's elite troops and remained there for many years. Dalantai sat before the tent and pulled a potato out from the campfire. He broke it apart and ate it with the sun-dried horse meat. His beard was so thick he appeared rather comedic while chewing. He was not as imposing and majestic as Suhbishao had been. On the contrary, he was very short and small, so much that he did not look like a man that was hailed from the Qiang tribe at all. Wise one who traverses the desert, you have ridden your horse before my tent and brought along the exhortation of the heroic eagle. Dalantai swallowed the scalding hot potatoes and watched Bayan beside the campfire. But the demands of the heroic eagle are too extortionate. Chieftain of the bears beneath the snowy peaks, Bayan sat cross-legged and bowed to Dalantai. I bring with me the most sincere greetings from the heroic eagle. The demands are all negotiable, for the heroic eagle sees you as a friend. Hassan was the heroic eagle of the Hanshi tribe. He had sent over the wise Bayan long before Xiao Qi had set out. Dalantai gave the other half of the potato to Bayan. The wolf pup of Libei is young and strong. I heard that he killed Huhlu and Achi, and defeated the proud scorpions of the heroic eagle at the Hashi sinkhole. I'm already too old to ride a horse anymore. I'm afraid I can no longer fight with such a young man. Bayan accepted the potato with both hands and hesitated for only a brief moment before replying. You are the bear of the valiant tiger, Suhbishao, and you lead the Qiang tribe to stand tall in the southeast of the desert. You are a strong man that even the Hanshi tribe dare not provoke rashly. The heroic eagle has strong faith in your might. The wolf pup of Libei is way too young. He is far less terrifying than the king of wolves. If that is truly the case, Dalantai wiped his beard, then why hasn't the heroic eagle, who had hacked off the head of the king of wolves, slaughtered this wolf yet? Dalantai was not lying, he was indeed very old. His hair was not yet white, but both his hands had already lost the ability to hold onto a blade for long. Even though he did not possess the spirit Suhbishao had, he could lead the Qiang tribe into weathering blizzards and maintain their dignity as a powerful tribe of the desert. He was not of the same ilk as Huhlu. he resembled a wise sage more than Bayan did. "This is the reason the heroic eagle sent me to look for you," Bayan said. "Our mighty cavalry has yet to break through the defenses of the Libe armored cavalry, not because we are not powerful enough but because we are out of provisions. The king of wolves is dead. Honorable and wise Dalantai, you have also seen the future of the desert. We are about to stride into a new, uncharted territory where all the tribes will no longer have to starve. This is the wish of the great hero, as well as the wish of the heroic eagle. We need your help." The aroma of the potatoes buried in the campfire wafted out. Dalantai prodded them with a tree branch, not at all moved by Bayan's deference. "Many years ago, Gaganhazi of the Hulu tribe resorted to underhand means to kill my chief in Getal and offered the head of the valiant tiger to Amuer. Amuer did not reject it. He picked up a potato again but did not break it open. Instead, he wiped away the dirt on it with the rough pulps of his fingers. Amuer is a rapacious vulture. He is not our brother." A warrior of the Qiang tribe sitting at the other end stood up, a gesture meant to see a guest out. Bayan did not move. He faced Dalantai and said, "Honorable Dalantai, that was a foolish mistake of ours in the past. We now have a common enemy. Who was the one to force this enemy awake?" Dalantai's eyes, which resembled a line, looked towards Bayan. "Amuer intends to conquer every corner where the sun shines upon, and for that reason, he did not hesitate to use such shameless means to coerce us into leaving from our homeland. You stupid, low-down lad. To think you would call Suhbishao's murder a foolish mistake." Bayan said, "I apologize for my words, Dalantai." The Yuxing tribesmen blocked the surrounding light off. They stood all around, watching Bayan with a gaze akin to watching an antelope. "If Hassan wants our help, he should beg for our forgiveness." Dalantai peeled off the potato skin. "If Hassan is willing to kill his wife and let the bastards of the Hulu tribe pay the price, we will agree to send our troops to the Bayanjun commandery on his behalf." "Don't do this." Bayan had already been dragged up. He raised his voice. "Gaganhazi is already dead. Duo Erlin is an innocent maiden." Dalantai looked at Bayan as he devoured the potato all by himself. End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 244, Snowy Peaks. Chagan kneeled reverently in the tent, his ash-white hair cascading down to the ground as he pleaded, "Honorable hero, the Qiang tribe is the most crafty bear in the great desert. We of the Hulu tribe are willing to double the supply of grains your esteemed self needs." The great hero, Amuer, stared at the letter in his palms. Hassan bore some resemblance to him, but he was far more rugged and stronger than Hassan. Amuer set down the letter and gently brushed his thumb with the thumb ring across his slovenly stubble. He looked like a man who could topple over drunk at any time by the side of the road. There's a saying in Great Joe that goes act within one's capabilities. Amuer's voice was low and deep. "I thank you for your utmost sincerity, but my friend, your sheep flocks have all been sent to the war zone. If this goes on, many people from the Hulu tribe will starve to death in winter this year." Chagan's kneeling and kowtowing body appeared lowly and humble as he said, "I'm willing to trade all my cattle and sheep in exchange for Duo Erlin's longevity." Amuer raised his head slightly. His thumb ring slid along the jut on his throat. He laughed in spite of himself. "Chagan, so you heard those rumors? My son killed Suhbishao. If Dalantai wants an eye for an eye, I can offer up my head. The Hulu tribe is willing to pay the price for its contemptible act." Chagan straightened up his back. The yellow sand of the desert had added a blackish yellow tint to his aged face. He continued, "But he cannot take away my daughter." Duo Erlin was Chagan's only daughter. She was the precious pearl of the Hulu tribe. The Hulu tribe did not have strong, sturdy horses, nor did they have eagles that could soar in the skies, but they had the protection the heavenly god of Chidi bestowed upon them. The Hulu tribe lived deep in the desert, and it had the most fertile oasis in the desert, Lake Chidi. In the legends, they were the children who grew up drinking the milk of the heavenly god of Chidi. Duo Erlin was born with eyes like the waters of Lake Chidi, and the Hulu tribe regarded her as the dew of the morning. She was the most carefree girl of all in the entire desert. Duo Erlin married Hassan, so she's no longer the precious pearl of Lake Chidi, but the precious pearl of the 6 tribes in the desert. Holding onto the handle of his chair, Amuir stood up. His broad shoulders seemed to be holding the slanting ray of sunlight leaking in. If Hassan can't even protect his own wife, then he's unworthy of being Duo Erlin's husband and does not deserve to have the allegiance of the Hulu tribe. Chagan, my good friend, stand up and hold your scimitar tight. Watch that lad. If he dares to slight your daughter, you can kill him. Chagan kowtowed, the wrinkles on his forehead pressing against the ground. I serve the great hero, and I firmly believe that the heroic eagle, Hassan, will not betray Duo Erlin. Because his father is the most valiant warrior of all in the great desert. Amuir walked slowly. When he reached the flap of the tent, he was still scratching at the jut in his thrower. He gazed at the yellowing sky awash in the sunset glow. His old thumb ring rolled over his Adam's apple, revealing a scar that had been left there. This was a mark that Xiao Fangxiu left him more than a decade ago in the eastern mountain ranges of Hanjian. The Qiang tribe has been blinded by the wind of the snowy pass. Dalantai is still reveling in their past glory. Amuir looked back and said to Chagan. Without their valiant tiger, Suhbashao, the Qiang tribe cannot stop my Hassan at all. Bayan received a reply from Hassan. He read it over quickly and drank a bowl of milk tea after he was done. He sat cross-legged before the territory of the Qiang tribe, right in the wilderness, with a book spread open on his knees, as he requested Dalantai to meet him again. A warrior from the Qiang tribe waved his hand at him to drive him away. Get lost. Bayan drew a line before his knees with a finger and said, I'm in the territory of the Qingsha tribe and so have not affronted you. You're blocking us from taking a piss, the warrior said. Are you going to take a piss like an animal before the eyes of the heavenly gods? Bayan looked at his book. As long as Dalantai would see me once again, this piece of gobi can be given to you people to use as a cesspit. Bayan was a wise one. He carried a book with him, and that meant he was the heavenly god's eye of wisdom traversing the great desert. As long as he was not so inclined, no one could pull down his pants to take a piss before his eyes. Achi and Huhlu did not respect Bayan and so they both died. This gave Bayan an even more air of mystery. This was the 5th day Bayan had been keeping watch here. Dalantai finally agreed to see him again. Bayan gathered up his book and said to Dalantai, Honorable. The Libe armored cavalry has already reached the Bayanjun commandery. There's not much time left for Hassan. Dalantai took off his boots and stepped barefoot on the yellow earth. Has he killed his wife? Bayan slipped out Hassan's letter and made to hand it over. Dalantai raised a hand to stop him and shook his head. I'm illiterate. You read it? The heroic eagle wishes me to tell you, Bayan said. Bayan was midway through when he heard the sound of horse hooves coming from afar. Dalantai stood up and walked ahead, but before he could open his mouth, he saw a burgundy stallion charging straight into the Qiang tribe's territory before eventually stopping in front of Dalantai. It was by the lakeside of Lake Chidi when I heard that the Honorable Dalantai wants my head. Carrying her horsewhip in hand, Duo Erlin looked at Dalantai amid the restless treading of the horse. If you want to use the valiant tiger, Suhbashao, to coerce my husband with, you should ask for my consent first. And so you ride your horse into my territory. Admiring this flower of Chidi in the legends, Dalantai asked, because you've decided to use your own head to win this victory for your husband. Bayan jolted to his feet and saw that the warriors within the territory had also stood up. He hurriedly walked over and raised his arms to protect Duo Erlin's horse. To Dalantai, he said, No, this is not what the heroic eagle intends. My elder brother killed your chief. Duo Erlin raised her hand and wiped the dust on her face with the back of her hand. She had been on the move for several days. Gegenhazi is the best brother in the world, but he is not worthy of being called a hero. If you want to avenge Suhbashao, you can take away my head, but this is a feud between the Qiang tribe and the Hulu tribe, not your feud with Hassan. You should speak to me. Saying so, Duo Erlin tossed the dagger on her waist to the ground. I am willing to use my death to apologize to the Qiang tribe for Gegenhazi's rash act. Dalantai is a good man. Take up this dagger and kill me, and our Hulu tribe would have thus paid off this debt. Dalantai picked up the small dagger. It was exquisite and pretty, inlaid with cat's eye gems, with a kind of incisive yet innocent beauty, just like Duo Erlin. You are very courageous. If Gegenhazi was just as courageous as you, the Qiang tribe and the Hulu tribe could have become brothers years ago. There is no if in this world. Take my head to offer as a sacrifice for the valiant tiger, then pick up your scimitar and pledge allegiance to the heroic eagle. Duo Erlin dismounted from her horse. The hem of her skirt fluttered in the night wind as she walked a few steps towards Dalantai. The opportunity for the Qiang tribe is right now. Dalantai spread open his palm and held Duo Erlin's dagger as if he was holding a flower in full bloom. He looked at Duo Erlin. Strangely enough, the expression in her eyes made it seem as if he was looking at his own daughter. The frigid wind of the night sent the banner of the Qiang tribe flapping. With the air of a man who had been through the vicissitudes of life, he said, "Silly girl, this debt can never be repaid." Bayan took the opportunity to say, "The heroic eagle can promise Dalantai that whether or not the Qiang tribe is willing to send troops to the Bayanjun commandery, he is willing to return the Qiang tribe's homeland. He will also give the Qiang tribe all the cattle and sheep he owns as an apology on behalf of the Hulu tribe. But if Dalantai insists on taking his wife away from him, then he will fight to the bitter end with the Qiang tribe at the risk of his life." Dalantai's always narrowed eyes widened a little. He had heard similar words before. Just 2 days ago, Harigu had sat in the tent and said respectfully to him, "The prefectural lord of Zongbo extends his arms to Dalantai. We're willing to seize back the homeland for the Qiang tribe, and until then, Duan province is also willing to supply sufficient grains to the Qiang tribe." These people all knew that the Qiang tribe wanted back their homeland. They preferred to remain in their old place and guard the snowy peaks on Suhbashao's behalf. Dalantai clasped his hands and said, benevolently and briskly, "The Qiang tribe, in receiving what it is due, is willing to fight for you." It was the same answer he had given Harigu. End chapter. Qiang Jin Jiu. Book 3, Drunk in Wild Songs. Chapter 245, Relay Station. It was the second quarter of the hour of Sui, when the stars hung over the vast plains. Xiao Qi stood on the sand dune and drank his remaining on horseback. The strong wine gushed down his throat and he swallowed it slowly, letting the pungent spiciness linger in his mouth for a long time. Once night fell, the wind would intensify and yellow sand buried Lang Tao Shuijin's hooves. The moment the second quarter passed, Xiao Qi saw Harigu returning. Harigu dismounted from his horse and removed the veil covering his mouth and nose. Turning his head aside, he spat a few mouthfuls of sand and said, "Dalantai has agreed to it." Xiao Qi did not speak. Behind him, Chen Yang asked, "What terms did you offer him?" "We gave him the grasslands to the east of Suotian Pass. That's the homeland of the Qiang tribe. Dalantai wants to go home." "You gave them a vast expanse of grasslands?" Xiao Qi repeated. Harigu lifted both hands slightly and said to Xiao Qi, "His lordship wants to give the Qiang tribe the Han-Shi tribe's territory, which is even more fertile. I think what I've negotiated is even better of a deal. The Han-Shi tribe's territory is near Libei. Moving the Qiang tribe there makes it easier to control them. This is the outcome Lanzhou wants, but you pushed them back to the eastern side of the snowy peaks." Xiao Qi sealed the wine pouch tight and tossed it to Chen Yang beside him. We have no eyes on the eastern side of the snowy peaks to keep watch on them. Haragu chased a few steps after Xiao Qiye and said, the Qiang tribe treasures old ties. No matter how fertile the Hanshi tribe's territory is, it will be hard for it to shake their determination. Second master, only the eastern side of the snowy peaks can sway Dalantai. Besides, the grasslands there are almost gone. They still have to move north, eventually. You're playing tricks. Chen Yang turned sideways to block Haragu with his chest, then raised an arm to create some distance between them, preventing Haragu from continuing to chase after Xiao Qiye. You didn't talk to Dalantai about the Qingsha tribe's territory. As bait, the Qingsha tribe's territory was also Zongbo's bargaining chip. Going by Shen Zequan's game plan, Haragu ought to have first discussed the Qingsha tribe's territory with Dalantai before finally throwing out the Hanshi tribe's territory, but Haragu did not do so. He knew how to seek benefits for himself out of this. He wanted to swap out the Hanshi tribe's territory for the grasslands on the eastern side of the snowy peaks, so that he could keep the fertile land for the black scorpions led by himself. Xiao Qiye had already gotten on his horse. Chen Yang was still blocking Haragu. Haragu could not shove Chen Yang away. He paced restlessly where he was and spread his arms resignedly at Chen Yang. You should go and chat with Dalantai yourself and see if he'll move according to your presumptions. Chen Yang corrected the position of his blade that Haragu had bumped askew and said, he's already moving according to your presumptions. You want the Hanshi tribe's territory and his lordship will naturally give it to you, but not by resorting to such means. You've been with his lordship for so long, and yet you don't understand your master at all. Looking as if he did not wish to argue with Chen Yang, Haragu turned his back to Chen Yang. Chen Yang took a few steps back and made to chase after Xiao Qiye's horse. With his face to the plains, Haragu then said in the Biancha tongue, the way you are acting all like a dog that is really very devout. Having said that, he looked back and flashed a smile at Chen Yang as though nothing had happened. Chen Yang stepped onto the saddle and flashed a smile at Haragu, too. As he turned his horse around, he similarly answered in the Biancha tongue, the envious expression in the eyes of a bastard is very devout as well. Fuck. The Biancha words Chen Yang spoke in an accent close to the Hanshi tribe gave Haragu a fright. Before he arrived here, no one in Zongbo understood his words in the Biancha tongue. There's nothing about me that's outstanding, except that I'm a pretty quick learner of the Biancha language. What you learned in Getal was in the Liaoying tribe's accent, which in truth, doesn't really sound nice, Chen Yang politely said. Bark one word more, and I'll smash your head in. Caught off guard, Haragu obediently nodded and watched as Chen Yang rode his horse away and kicked up dust all over his face. Asterisk asterisk asterisk. Xiao Qiye returned to the Bianjun commandery but did not find Qizuyan in the tent. He circled around and found the commander-in-chief in another tent. Qizuyan had just woken up, and upon hearing movements, leaned out to whistle at Xiao Qiye. Xiao Qiye, with the Longli blade in hand, was in a quandary over whether to advance or retreat. The rouge on Qizuyan's lips had been partially applied, and the pads of both her little fingers were stained with this bit of red. However, she was not applying it herself. Instead, she leaned over and handed the job over to Hua Xiangji. Hua Xiangji rose and carefully applied the rouge evenly on the commander-in-chief's lips. This color is really pretty. Hua Xiangji's voice was soft and pleasing. It suits Commander-in-Chief Qi just right. It's not conspicuous at night. She applied that last bit and turned her head to ask Xiao Qiye with a smile, isn't it pretty? Xiao Qiye folded his arms and looked for a long time. In a rare moment of hesitancy, he answered, not bad. It wasn't that Qizuyan had never put on makeup before. When she was in her regular robes at home, or attending a banquet in her court attire, she would put on a little makeup. But no matter how superb Xiao Qiye's eyesight was, he could not tell the difference between this rouge and the one that the commander-in-chief usually applied. You don't understand. With her slender, delicate fingers, Hua Xiangji brushed open the handkerchief on her lap to reveal a small carved mirror inlaid with pearls that had been wrapped within. She picked it up and held it up for Qi Zuyan to take a look. Qi Zuyan wiped her hands on the handkerchief. She could only see her own lips and chin in the mirror. She smiled and said, "It's pretty." Xiao Qiye waited for a moment before Qi Zuyan let down the tent flap and stepped out. "The main madam is here to work out the accounts for me," Qi Zuyan explained. Xiao Qiye coughed into the expansive night and said, "Oh." Xiao Qiye glanced at Qi Zuyan out of the corners of his eyes. The commander-in-chief was young, but she wasn't that young anymore. At least for a woman, she had long passed the marriageable age. Xiao Jiming and Lu Guangbai were on good terms with her, but they never asked her about her marriage, because everyone knew that Qi Zuyan could not get married. Third young Miss Mental Arithmetic is outstanding. I heard about it when I was in Chu capital. The accounts in your residence are complicated and tedious. With her help, it will be a lot easier. The Empress Dowager has fallen and her status in Qidong is not like before. Once Shui Yanqing is done investigating the Chuan city, it will be the Dis city's turn. The Hua clan is in imminent danger. I'm worried my father's concubines at home will create a scene and stir up trouble if I don't let her stay by my side. There was still a lingering fragrance of rouge on Qi Zuyan. She did not continue explaining along this line, but instead teased, "And besides, I am this fond of girls." Xiao Qiye stood still. Both of them had already ascended their way up the city wall. "Your scorpion is back," Qi Zuyan said. Xiao Qiye pointed to the southeast and said, "The Qiang tribe is willing to make way and open up a path for you. They want to retreat to the grasslands on the eastern side of Suotian Pass, to return to their original land." The fire reflected Qi Zuyan's raised face. Hua Xiangji was right. This color of rouge was inconspicuous, and it resembled Qi Zuyan's natural color when tinted by the color of the night. With a pensive expression, she said, "Dalantai is foolish. Only a fool would give up the Qingsha tribe's territory and return to the eastern side of the snowy peaks that had already been engulfed whole by the yellow sands of the desert." "He's not foolish," Xiao Qiye said. "He makes way for you with the intent for you to take a detour to Gedal. Once you get there, he will be the hand that chokes off your retreat path, and when the time comes, he can make any demands of you as he pleases. Then Dalantai is still a fool, because you and I can see through such an obvious and easy to understand tactic." Qi Zuyan tapped her fingertips on the side of her arms as she looked out into the depths of the night. "You've been hanging out with Lu Guangbai for a long time and learning all about his earthliness. You want to dig deep into the earth when you stand on the ground, and you itch to commit to heart the terrain stretching for thousands of li all around. However, you have overlooked the tribe itself." Qi Zuyan skirted around Xiao Qiye. Bracing herself on the battlement, she nimbly vaulted onto it, then stepped on the opening and bent over to inspect the mechanical crossbow at the top of the wall. "Dalantai makes way for me. My guess is that he won't obstruct me. The Qiang tribe doesn't have that many warriors. Dalantai can only choose to concentrate his military force in one place, otherwise, he won't be able to ward off attacks from any party." Xiao Qiye thought for a moment. "You're saying that Dalantai is going to concentrate his forces to attack some other places? When I leave the Bianjun Commandery, half of the 40,000 garrison troops here have to leave too. Without Lu Guangbai, there's no commanding general who can engage in a 2-and-4 battle with them. If they don't attack now, then what are they going to wait for?" Qi Zuyan said. "Even so, it's not worth it, Jaja," Xiao Qiye said. "Since Dalantai doesn't have sufficient troops, then once he takes down the Bianjun Commandery, you'll soon be on the journey back. He will also be attacked by the Qiangjun Commandery garrison troops from the rear. There's no way he can hold on to the Bianjun Commandery at all. If he goes through all that trouble to get here, it won't be just for the sake of food, like Hassan." Qi Zuyan straightened up, and as she turned her head aside, the wind mussed up her hair. She did not continue to make further inferences like Lu Guangbai did, but said instead, "Then we shall give it a try." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. After Xiao Qiye left the battle zone, Liu Bei started to show signs of exhaustion. However, Hassan's onslaught of attack never abated. Lu Guangbai could only hold down the fort and have Mount Luo increase its vigilance. The eagle eyes of Duan province could not see the banks of the Hashi River. It was at this time that Huo Lingyuan quietly left Duan province. Huo Lingyuan's squad was small in number. They were all Jin Yue, taciturn men of few words who traveled simply and rode the ponies they had captured from Achi. They headed north along the Hashi River, resting at sunrise and moving after sunset. The wind was dry tonight. Huo Lingyuan finished the last drop of water in his canteen and wiped his mouth as he sat on horseback with eyes in front. If only that annoying chap, Fei Sheng, was here. Huo Lingyuan hung the water canteen again on the back of his horse. As he lacked Fei Sheng's observational insights, he was very slow to react in the darkness. Yet, he could only make his moves at night. "Where exactly are we going?" A Jin Yue following Huo Lingyuan took off his fur collar and poured water over himself. "We've been heading north for 5 days. We'll stay here," Huo Lingyuan said, "until we can walk out with our eyes closed." Whenever they came within the vicinity of the Shazan camp while heading north, they would turn back. However, they would not return to Duan province but continue going north on the same route, and so on and so forth. The Jin Yue kept silent. Before setting off, Qiao Tianya had given them a dressing down, so no one refuted Huo Lingyuan during the journey. The ponies had great stamina and endurance. They were not tired even after walking in the Gobi desert for several days. With their thick necks, they looked stupid, but the Jin Yue had already gotten used to their speed, which was at odds with their appearance. These were all splendid horses. When it was almost dawn, Huo Lingyuan stopped on the riverbank. He let the ponies quench their thirst, while he himself squatted at the side to wash his face. The water of the river in the early morning was icy cool, and a splash to the face proved to be invigorating. Huo Lingyuan opened his water canteen and pressed it into the river. Under the gurgling sounds, he suddenly saw a flash of dark red lurching out. The fingers he had been pressing down came into contact with something icy cold but soft. Then, black hair floated up alongside the red. A body. A Jin Yue who was similarly washing his face shouted in a low voice and yanked at the hair to drag the body out of the water. Huo Lingyuan turned over the body, whose face was bloated from being soaked in the water. He wrung out the muddy slit and started establishing the identity of the body. "He has been stripped of his armor," the Jin Yue said quickly. "He died upstream." Huo Lingyuan pulled apart the clothing on the body and jolted to his feet. "He's an armored cavalryman." Asterisk asterisk asterisk. An armored cavalryman was galloping on the bridleway connecting Mount Luo to Shazan camp. He tottered on the verge of falling amid the jolts and bumps, leaving a long trail of blood on the ground where his horse's hooves passed. His helmet concealed his face from view. He was just an unknown junior soldier. His lips moved, but all he could do was to breathe his words. The horse galloped into the relay station 50 li south of Shazan camp. He tumbled off and crashed into the ground. The riding stable requests. He hung on until this point but breathed his last before he could finish his words. As long as he could reach this place, it was a victory. The armored cavalry at the relay station would immediately convey the news to Shazan camp, and reinforcements would head south. But then, the relay station was deathly still. Corpses were strewn everywhere, including the falcons in the falcon cage. There were no longer any survivors here. Waves of heat shimmered. Not even the cry of a bird could be heard. End chapter. Note: hour of Sui is 11 p.m. to 1 a.m.